Hello there and welcome. This is Mikhail or Michael speaking, and as always, before the video starts, I want to express my gratitude towards those who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal, or Super Thanks. I really appreciate your generosity, so thank you friends and have a great day. Today's video I will start with the Zaporozhian frontline, or to be more precise, with Orikhiv direction. In the last few days, Ukrainians were massively assaulting Russian positions in front of Rabotina and Verbova, and at certain places were able to penetrate Russian defensive lines. However, these Ukrainian assaults were quickly met with Russian counterattacks. Recent report suggests that Russians were very fast at reinforcing this front line, and as a result of that, they successfully counterattacked Ukrainians at Rabotina and stopped their assault in that direction, and counter-attacked from Verbova and recaptured some of the previously lost positions as well. So, as a result of this back and forth, Russians were able to recover this much territory from the Ukrainian forces. Here, in the direction of Verbova, Ukrainians were very close at advancing towards it and reaching the first Russian defensive line. And Ukrainian assaults to the flank of Rabotina also made it difficult for the Russians to defend. Because of this breakthrough, Ukrainians had abilities not only to assault this settlement straight on, but also to its flank and rear. This initial success by the Ukrainian forces in the direction of Verbova was a high price to pay. Here in this video you can see multiple vehicles that were destroyed as a result of fighting in this sector. And now with Russian successful counterattack, it is safe to assume that all this armor was lost without gaining any significant territories. Now, judging by the look of the armor, some people may assume that some of the vehicles are rusted. They are not rusted but burned. Burned vehicles look like that. So this in a way proves that this is a new video. Generally, the situation on this front line remains to be somewhat the same for the Ukrainians. As they advance towards the actual battlefield, they are easily spotted by the Russians and are being fired upon even before they reach the front line, and as a result of that, taking very high losses. Here in this video you can see Ukrainian column of Bradleys coming under attack from the Russian forces, and some of those Bradleys are being destroyed. And if weather is good enough, Russians are flying their suicide drones and K-52 attack helicopters and have a free reign over Ukrainian fields. Then from Zaporozhye, let's quickly touch on the situation around Pyatykhatky, Kamyansky settlements. It has been remarkably quiet around Pyatykhatky and Lapkova, as Ukrainians are attempting to establish several strong points in this settlement. Russians are heavily bombarding it with artillery. Then, of course, there is Ukrainian attempts at assaulting to the flank and rear of the settlement of Kamyansky. At this point in time, there are no new breakthroughs, and Russian positions here hold strong. Then, from here, let's move to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead. Situation here remains to be difficult and very dynamic for both sides. It would seem that initial claims of the settlement of Staromayorsky being retaken by the Russians were false. At this point in time, as most reports suggests, this settlement is in the gray zone. Like I said in the previous video, which was unfortunately targeted by age restriction and not a lot of people saw it, Russians still have positions in Urozhaine, on the tactical heights, and in front of Staromayorsky, which allow them to have fire control over the settlement, and because of that, this settlement is in the gray zone. Then of course there's artillery that does its job. For example, here on this video you can see settlement of Staromayorsky being shelled by the Russians. So technically it is safe to say that because of this pocket right here, as you can see, any Ukrainian troops that enter the settlement are under constant fire by the Russians. And then, of course, there were Ukrainian attempts at assaulting settlement of Novodonetsky. These were unsuccessful. And Urozhaine. However, as you can see by the map, Russians were able to significantly expand their territory in front of Urozhaine, which in a way saved the settlement from direct attacks by the Ukrainian forces. Situation in the settlement of Priutne remains to be difficult for the Russians. Here, after continuous assaults from Livadne, Novodarivka, and Rivnopol, Ukrainians were able to penetrate initial Russian defensive lines and successfully advance to the north of Pyatykhatky, establishing a bridgehead. As you can see now, settlement of Pyatykhatky is in close vicinity of newly established Ukrainian positions. These positions are still weak, and Russians, I'm sure, would counterattack, or at least attempt to counterattack here in this sector. So perhaps the situation here is not final. However, like never before, the settlement of Pyatykhatky is under immense pressure and is in danger of being captured. Russians, of course, have still a lot of possibilities and time to retreat. As you can see, there is a line of several settlements, for example, Novoukrayinskaya, Vremevka, Vladine, but it would seem Russians are not willing to give up these tactical heights right here, so fighting here in this sector continues as I speak. Then from here, let's quickly visit and talk about the situation on Bakhmut frontline. Now, there's not a lot of things that have changed. However, I've been watching over some pro-Ukrainian sources, and they have been claiming a lot of outrageous stuff. For example, they still claim that the settlement of Andreevka is under their control, and that Russians have almost completely retreated behind this rail line. They also claim that the settlement of Kurdyumovka and Zelenopilya is about to fall. However, at this point in time, there is no reason to suggest that this is true in one way or another. For example, this is how a pro-Ukrainian map depicts this situation. So, even pro-Ukrainian map doesn't claim that settlement of Klishevka, Andreevka, nor Kurdyumovka or Zelenopilya is under the Ukrainian control. But in a way, these kind of contradicting news is a sign of extremely heavy battles happening within this sector. Then, of course, there is settlement of Klishevka, which Ukrainians are still unable to capture. At this point in time, they are throwing everything they can in an attempt to take control over the settlement. It is absolutely necessary if they want to advance further on this front line. However, Russian forces here are resilient and are not willing to give up just as easy. Then, situation on the northern flank continues to be somewhat the same as well. There were again some limited Ukrainian assaults in the direction of Berhivka and Yagodne, however these failed, and also some assaults in the direction of Dubovo-Vasiliivka. And then finally from here, let's visit the situation on the Kreminna and Svatove front line. Ukrainians here are in active defense. They are constantly attacking and counter-attacking Russians across all front line. Russians are mirroring their actions with the attacks and counterattacks of their own, so there are no territorial change on this front line as of right now. Then there is the situation here where Russians a week ago were able to advance and make a breakthrough. However, it would seem that Ukrainians were successful at reinforcing this front line, and as a result of that, they have successfully advanced here, retook several settlements in this sector, and are now threatening the settlement of Nadia to be recaptured. Ukrainian sources are claiming that settlement of Nadia is already recaptured. However, we should wait more for that confirmation. Here on this front line, Russians are not in the passive defense. They are continuously counter-attacking Ukrainians. Strongholds and trenches change hands here a lot. So this became a new hot spot on the map. So this is the end of the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please consider supporting it with a like, comment, and a subscription. As you know, these actions not only motivate me to work harder, but also helps spread the message. If you feel extra generous, please consider supporting me on Patreon, which will allow me to have additional source of income. Thank you in advance. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.